damn, it's cold out here. It's middle of winter. Do you want to know the one thing that tipped me over to buying a Sony mirrorless camera from my Nikon? Well, watch and find out. See, it's cold out here. I will reveal that near the end of the video. But first, a few specs on the Sony A7c that we bought last year. I did promise to do a video about why I changed over to the Sony mirrorless system from Nikon. So just a few specs on this little compact full frame camera. And then I'll get into the reason why I switched over to Sony mirrorless system. Now the Sony A7c was announced in September of 2020. The Sony A7c is a small compact form factor mirrorless camera. Now it's not much bigger than the A6000 series of cameras, the APS-C models. Now it features a flip out screen, so you can vlog with it. You can get these overhead shots, you can get low down shots, you can get portrait style low shots. Now it features a 24 megapixel CMOS sensor, full frame sensor. So it has a lot of the features from the A7 Mark III camera that came out a few years ago. I think that came out the year before this. I have to put on screen the exact time that came out. I just can't remember at the moment, but it's got a lot of those features, plus real-time autofocus and real-time eye autofocus tracking in this camera in a smaller form factor. So yeah, it's a lot more compact than the A7 Mark III, where you've got the EVF up on the top here, whereas this one's got the rangefinder style camera body with the EVF over on the left hand side. So it makes it for a smaller form factor overall, especially when you're putting it into a camera bag and you haven't got that EVF hump to catch on anything. So for video, this can do 30 frames a second with a 1.2 crop, or it can do 24 frames a second with no crop, which is even better. But also in HD, full HD mode, it can do 120 frames per second, so you get a bit of slow motion capability with that. And it also has S-Log 2 and 3 and HLG modes for video. And it also has the quick and slow modes that all the modern Sony mirrorless cameras have as well. But it's a good little size camera. Now I've got the small rig cage on it, so it makes it a little bit chunkier, and it also has a little bit more pronounced grip on it to give you a bit of better purchase on the lens, on the camera. This camera here, I've got the Sigma 45mm lens on it. So my wife is filming me on her A7C with the Sony 40mm f2.5G lens on it, which all these lenses are really nice and compact. Now they do feature the NPFZ100 battery, like in the larger models, like the A7 series. All the A7 series have got them now. So you get about 680 shots using the EVF and 740 using the LCD on the back. So they're quite good long-lasting batteries. So far I haven't needed to buy an extra battery. I've never run out of battery power in one single day. But in saying that, you can power them by a power bank using the USB-C connection on the side of the camera. So you can power them up, and when you're out walking around, you can have it in your bag and have a little power bank on it, charge it up while you're out walking. So it's not really an issue for me not having a spare battery for it at the moment. So Okay, so now for the likes and the dislikes of this A7C from Sony. First like is the small size of this camera. It's 124mm wide, 71 high and 60 deep. So that's way smaller than all the higher end Sony cameras. And the Nikon that we had before, it's a little bit smaller than that as well, which, like I say, we haven't got that EVF hump on the top, so it's nice and square, sort of a form factor. Second thing that I like about the A7C is the weight of it, or should I say the lack of weight of it. It weighs in at 509 grams, and that's with the battery and I think memory card in it. That's body only, so whatever lens you put on it, add the weight to that. So 509 grams, that's pretty lightweight, I think, for a full frame mirrorless camera. The third thing I like is the articulating screen. Not just a flip up and down screen, but fully articulating, so you can turn it right round, like I mentioned earlier, and I can film myself. I can see my framing, see if I'm in the shot properly or not. For low down shots, portrait style, it's easier to frame that way than having to flip out. You'd be looking way down here, so now you can frame up your shots portrait style with the screen tilting up towards you. And same with overhead shots. It tilts 90 degrees to the camera body. Same with low shots, same deal. It's great. I like the articulating screen on the cameras, although the A7R5 has an even better design where it incorporates both the articulating screen and a tilt screen in one mechanism. I think that's brilliant. Fourth like of the camera, 24 megapixels for a full frame camera. I think it's a good resolution for a hybrid camera. I think if you wanted a true hybrid camera and you're wanting, like if you went up to say 61 megapixels like the A7R5, you're talking about huge files for photos. That might be good for cropping in, but for a hybrid camera where you're doing a bit of video as well, I think 24 megapixels is ample. Even like the ZV-E1, I think is 12 megapixels, and that's a video-centric camera. This is a good compromise between video and stills. Still, 24 megapixels is ample enough for most situations for still photography anyway. Number 5, battery life. In the Nikon Z6 I had, I was lucky to get 300 or 400 shots out of a single battery. With this camera, I'm getting 600-700 shots easy. It depends on how you shoot as well. If you're not reviewing your photos, if you're just looking through your EVF and just taking a few photos, you're not going to go through the battery that quickly. But compared to the older models which had the FW50, this NP FZ100 battery lasts a long time, so that's really great. So now we get to the dislikes. The number one dislike of this camera, don't fall in the water, is that small EVF. Now when we first jumped into the Sony system, we were basically just dipping our toes. That's what my wife and I, we both bought the same camera, bought one each. We're sort of just dipping our toes into the Sony system. We wanted something smaller and lighter than what we had before in the Nikon system. So we chose the A7c because of the form factor on it. But the EVF, we thought, it shouldn't be too bad. But now after 8-9 months of using it, I'm finding it is very limiting. In bright light, it's hard to see through that EVF because it hasn't got a big eye cup on it. The resolution is only 2.36 million dots, I think, and the magnification is quite low. So that in itself is the biggest dislike of this A7c. Number two, the menu system in it. Now I've used a lot of cameras with different menu systems in them, and they all have their quirks and features. They all take some getting used to. There's a lot of stuff in this Sony camera, especially to do with video, that I've got to Google it to see what the hell it is all about, like Ni and Gamma, those sorts of things in the video functions. It's just, I think, a way too overcomplicated. They could simplify things a little bit. They could have like a basic menu for new users, and they could have a more in-depth menu for the people who know about all these things, really. I just want to do some video with just a couple of different settings on it, not get into all the technical aspects of this, that and the other. But anyway, I'm used to the menu, and I know they've updated the menu system for the A7R5. I really haven't had a good look at that, so that's probably going to take a bit of getting used to too if we ever switch to something like that. Number three is the grip. Now I've got a cage on here, like I said earlier in the video. I find the grip is just a little bit shallow. It would be good to have even 5-7mm deeper grip. It would just give a little bit extra purchase on the grip when you're holding it one-handed. Number four, touchscreen. Now it has a touchscreen, but the functionality of it is such that you can only tap on it to select a focus point, or when you're in playback you can move the photo around, and that's pretty much it. I don't know why they didn't go for full touchscreen capability, like in menus and all that sort of thing. It would have been, you know, you got touchscreen functions on it, why not extend it to the menus? It would just make things so much easier. Number five, weather sealing. Now, I don't really trust this out in even a little bit of light drizzle. I have heard horror stories of some of the Sony cameras, especially with the hot shoe cover. If you haven't got that on with the the multi-port user interface, or whatever they call it on the hot shoe, if you get a little bit of moisture in there, it can play up in the camera. Now, here's an example of proper weather sealing. And I wish the Sony system, I wish Sony would implement better weather sealing on their cameras. My wife and I, a few years ago, we had Olympus EM1, the original version, and we're up in the Arthur's Pass region, and wife slipped over, her camera went into the mud. I said, no problem, I'll wash it out under the tap. So we got back to Arthur's Pass, went to a tap, and I washed the camera and the lens off under running water, got all the mud off it, because the lens we had on it was a pro lens anyway, and that was weather sealed as well. Cleaned up nicely, went for ages. It's probably still going now. All the time we had it, we had no issues. It had zero issues with it, and that was running the camera under, you know, like a tap. It's just running water over it, and I was cleaning it all off. And that's proper weather sealing. So Sony, take notice. That's the perfect example of proper weather sealing. And I believe that Pentax have very good weather sealing as well. If you could implement something like that in the cameras, people would have a bit more faith in taking out in all weathers and getting all sorts of different shots. Where at the moment, if we go out and when there's a bit of rain, we'll take an umbrella and cover it, which we have done over on the west coast, as I don't really fully trust it out in all weathers. Now, an extra one, I've done 5 likes, I've done 5 dislikes. The 6, I'll give you a bonus 6th dislike, is the 1 card slot. Now normally on a camera you have a card door on the right of the camera. This one is on the left of the camera as you're looking at the back of it. And I almost always, when I get to the computer, I go around to the right hand side. Oh, the card's not there, it's on the left hand side. Open up the door and take the card out. That's really annoying. I wish they'd put it on the right hand side, but I know there's a big battery in there, but still. And having 1 card slot is a bit of a downer as well. Hopefully in the A7c Mark II, they address some of these issues that I pointed out in the camera. Then I think it would be an ideal travel camera, full frame travel camera, hybrid camera. Right, here we are at near the end of the video. Now, the one major reason why we switched to Sony, lens selection. That is the biggest reason why we changed. When we had the Nikon mirrorless camera, the Z6, there was not a great deal of selection for lenses for the Z system. You either bought the Nikon lenses, or there were a few third-party manufacturers making manual focus lenses only. But with a little bit of research, I looked into the Sony system, and I've known people who've had Sonys, and looking into it, there's just so much more variety. And one of the things that my wife and I wanted to get away from was big cameras, big zoom lenses, and yeah, basically smaller, lighter lenses. Because we had like the Nikon system, we had like my wife had a 70 to 300. I had a 70 to 200 f2.8, and that was weighty with a larger body as well. But these small lenses, like this one here, this is the Sigma 45mm f2.8. You see how small that is. And I also have the Samyang 75mm f1.8 and the 24mm Samyang f1.8. And as you can see, these lenses are small. Now, my wife uses a 24mm Sony G lens, and it's f2.8, yes it is. And the one that's filming us now on her camera is the 40mm f2.5. And the biggest lens we've got is my wife has got, is the 85mm f1.8. That's the biggest and heaviest. But it's not the largest by a lot. The 24mm is nearly the same length. 75 is just a little bit smaller, and the Sony, the 24mm, even shorter again. But this is one of the things we liked about the Sony system. There was just so much variety whereas in Nikon we were limited to their f1.8 lenses, and they're like about this long and quite big anyway. For like a 50mm f1.8, they're just so much bigger. I can remember the f-mount lenses for Nikon that were 50mm was like about that sort of size, 50mm f1.8, and now their newer ones are more like at about that length. They're just so much bigger. But one of the things that Sony did early on in the piece was to open up their lens mount to third-party manufacturers. So likes of Sigma, Samyang, there's lots of brands that make them for the Sony E-mount system. Everybody who makes a new lens is basically making it for the E-mount system first, and then other manufacturers come along later, and some of them are starting to open up their lens mount to people. Canon's one that's not. Nikon are just starting to let third-party manufacturers make lenses like these sort of things, but only if they don't compete with their own focal length lenses. So like a 50mm f1.8 autofocus lens, it's the likes of Sigma or Tamron or Samyang are not going to be able to make one for the Nikon system. They'd have to make it like 45 or 55mm or something like that to be able to utilize the Z mount. So that is the number one reason why we switched to Sony, for a smaller body and smaller lenses. And I'll put up some examples of some of the photos I've taken on some of my lenses, and I'll try and get some of my wife's lenses on photos on there as well, to show you what the quality is like from some of these smaller compact lenses. So yeah, for using prime lenses, if we want to get closer to the action, we've just got to use our feet. We can't zoom in. We don't own any zoom lenses for the system, and this is all we have, plus the lens that's filming us now, and that's going to do us for now until we decide otherwise. So I hope you like that review of the A7c and the lenses that we chose for the system. So if you enjoyed the video, please put a like, and please remember to subscribe. It's free. It won't cost you a cent. So I hope you all like that, and we'll see you again on the next one.